Hi everyone, welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Core Recruitment is an international recruitment company and we look after mid to senior level recruitment across exec and non-exec roles. Now, we are doing this interview series to inject some positivity into the sector across kind of like the different areas that we operate across. And all of the interviews, whether they're videos or article format, are all available on our website, www.corerecruitment.com. So please feel free to view, share, and watch them all. And maybe if you want to get involved or if you've got anybody who you think has got an interesting story to share, then please get in touch with me, Christian Doyle, and we can get an interview or something like that set up. Now, really lucky to be joined today by the new Chief Executive of Yotel, Phil. Phil, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Good. I'm very pleased to have you here. Now, you are 5 months into a new role, which is incredibly exciting. So, congratulations on the new position. It's a brilliant brand. It's a brilliant business. I don't think everybody in the UK is entirely aware of just how many formats and areas and everything that you guys have. So, I know it's a completely basic question, but can you just give us a quick overview before we get into the nuts and bolts of the interview?
Yes, absolutely. So Yotel was born in airport locations just around 20 years ago. And the concept was let's take a first class experience on a plane and put it on the ground so that when somebody has an early flight or they've got a long layover, there is a very convenient hotel in the airport that they can go into, compact rooms, beds that recline, but obviously much bigger than a bed on a plane, uh, with a bathroom. So a very comfortable place for people to spend a bit of time while they're at an airport, because airports, as we know, if you're stuck there for 10 hours, there's not much that's more depressing than 10 hours in an airport, except if you're in a Yotel Air, because you have some comfort, you can relax, you can have a wash, you can watch TV. And it really, really took off. They were extremely popular and they remain extremely popular today. As air travel has expanded, so has our footprint, and they're very, very popular. But after this first kind of compact micro hotel room was beautifully formed, like this first class experience on the ground, Yotel started to think, well, this doesn't need to be just in airports. You could take this concept and you could put it in a city center. So from Yotel Air, we went to Yotel, which is the same concept. So it's very compact, very well designed, extremely well finished rooms, but they're small, uh, which is great for owners because they can have a relatively small footprint of real estate and then put a lot of bedrooms into that footprint. But our customers love it, and consequently, you can have a compact, first class experience in a hotel room in a city center. So that's what brought about Yotels in city centers. The first one was in New York. It's still there. It has over 700 rooms
Wow.
in the hotel, and our customers love it because it's compact but comfortable and a little bit more luxurious than you might expect. It does command good rates, but they're still affordable if you want to be in a downtown location in a kind of global primary city. And so that's Yotel. And then the third thing that was born was on a similar concept, but for people that wanted to stay a bit longer. And that is Yotel Pad, which is more of a compact apartment style living. We tend to see those also in city center locations, but having a much longer length of stay. There are facilities to do your laundry. There is a kitchen facility in the room. They're a little bit bigger, but they still follow the ethos of Yotel, which is to be compact but extremely well designed and extremely user friendly. And again, this is a pretty cool brand. The owner of the real estate gets a lot of units in one place. The guest has somewhere to stay that's extremely comfortable and compact and easy to use at the right price point. And I should say, watch this space because we have some more interesting brands coming out that fulfill the same criteria, but have a slightly different approach. I can't say too much at the moment, but we're pretty advanced in developing a couple of new brands. So exciting times ahead for Yotel.
Excellent, really interesting. And outside of kind of like the actual bedrooms on that kind of side of things, can you tell us a bit around some of the peripheral services or some of the leisure things that you've had in place there as well?
Well, yes. So Yotel is all about efficiency while you travel. So one of the things that we wanted to do is give people as much time to enjoy themselves when they're traveling as possible. So that involves taking out all the friction points. So we were the pioneers, or one of the pioneers in the industry, to bring in self-check-in kiosks where you can go to front desk. There is someone at reception to help you out, but it is actually quicker to go put your information into the screen and get a key and go to your room. And we've got check-in time down now. It can be done easily in under a minute,
Wow.
which gives people the time and the freedom to enjoy their travels a little bit more. Like, why would you want to be stood in a check-in queue when you can get it done yourself so much more quickly and efficiently? So that's one thing that's important to us. Uh, we also have in some of our hotels, we have our Yo bots, which again, we were the pioneers in having robotic cleaning solutions to go around the hotels and help clean, but they also carry room service and take deliveries to the rooms, which has been immensely popular. People like that kind of thing. It's really interesting, and we're looking now. We're an innovative company, and again, I can't say too much, but I will give a teaser. We're looking at some upgrades involving AI and holograms. So watch this space. Um, in addition to that, we've taken the normal hotel concept and we've tried to make it more efficient. So whether that's through our food and beverage offerings, which are bespoke to each location, or whether it's our grab and go shops and our vending machines, everything is more tech enabled than some of our competitors, and we really like to try and push the innovation as much as possible.
I love the hologram idea. I think that's absolutely amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens with that. I know you can't share too much about it though. Now, looking into you guys are very much a global business. So when you look at kind of like, the map of the world, where do you think most opportunity is for the business in the next 5 years?
Well, each market is a little bit different in terms of the way that our industry is perceived, received, and operated. So in the US, we tend to see that it's a major franchise market. I don't think many of the big brands, outside some of the luxury ones, I suppose, I don't think many of the big brands really manage their own hotels over there these days. It's all with third-party operators, franchisees. And we think that Yotel is a fantastic proposition. We are quite prototypical, and yet we're also flexible. And so, for somebody that wants to be a franchisee, Yotel as a franchisor is an attractive proposition because we have a business in a box that can be quite easily delivered. And we see a lot of growth coming in the US through that model, and we're just refining that at the moment. Uh, Interestingly, and perhaps not surprisingly, our brand is very well received in Asia. The brand was actually developed and designed in the UK, but it certainly has some sort of Japanese, Southeast Asian influences in it. And it's kind of come full circle. We just opened in Tokyo. We've been in Singapore for many, many years. And we have hotels opening this year in Bangkok and Kuala Lumpur. And every time I'm over there visiting, I'm struck by how popular our brand is. So we see a lot of growth over there. The Japanese market is one that really interests me, and others. I think we have a huge runway over there, and we haven't even spoken about China yet. And when you think about the concept of mass travel, compact rooms that can accommodate a lot of people in a relatively small space, these are the markets where I think we're going to see a lot of growth. And then, of course, we have Europe, Middle East, and Africa, our home patch, EMEA, and we have a nice churn at the moment. We have some really interesting deals in the hopper, ready to convert. So, look, I suppose the answer to your question, Christian, is we see growth for Yotel everywhere, but just in slightly different ways. I think Southeast Asia and Asia in general will probably be more management agreements with a few master franchises in there somewhere, perhaps. The US will be predominantly franchise, and then Europe, Middle East, and Africa will be a mixture of the two. So we're working very hard at the moment to just really build up our franchise support capabilities to make sure that franchisees are able to make the best out of their arrangements that they have with Yotel. But yes, the development pipeline looks really, really interesting.
Excellent. Now, coming on to a little bit of your personal journey, you had an exceptional rise, very well deserved, very hard fought, I'm sure, but through 24 years with Marriott. So, like, so looking, other people will watch this and think, my God, I want to be chief exec at Yotel one day. You know what I mean? So, like, what advice would you give others who are looking to progress their careers in the same way that you've done?
Well, look, I think everybody's journey probably needs to be a little bit different, but I'll talk about mine, and maybe people see some commonalities. So yes, you're right. Almost 25 years with Marriott. It was great. I went for a job and I ended up staying for a career. I traveled all over the world. I lived in different places with Marriott, and I really enjoyed every moment of it. It's one of the really good companies out there in our industry. Um, I started off with Marriott in a very lowly sales position and managed to work myself around and up the company. And I would give the advice that nobody really is going to go and take control of your career for you. And sometimes people find it difficult because they view it as being pushy. Sometimes people find it difficult to really take control of their own career. And my advice would be you have to be a little bit pushy, even if it's taking you outside of your comfort zone. You need to network very effectively internally. When you've done something that's good, you need to shout about it. People need to know. If there are project teams being put together that are of strategic importance to the company, you need to be a bit pushy to get on that project team because that's how your good work gets noticed. And I think sometimes people can be a bit reluctant to do that. So my advice would be do what feels comfortable for you, but you know, try and put yourself at the front of the line for interesting things that are being done. You definitely have to take risks. One of the biggest risks I ever took in my time at Marriott was when Marriott in Europe was trying to get more into the franchising business. And at that time, Marriott in the USA was big into franchising, but in Europe, it hadn't really hit its upward trajectory at that point. And I took a massive risk because Marriott was looking for somebody to basically start up their franchise business and see it through. And at the time, it was not really looking like it was going to go very far. But thankfully and luckily for me, and through a bit of hard work, we created a good franchise proposition, and our friends in development were able to go out and sell that. And we did a lot of deals and we grew the business massively. And it was a huge success. And it was probably one of the things that I enjoyed most about my time at Marriott. And it, in many ways, it made my career. So I think talk about your successes, be a bit pushy, take calculated risks on jobs that you might not think are the perfect fit for you, and then be patient. In big companies, in little companies, the right thing will come along for you. If it's not with the company you are, it'll come in another company. But be patient for the right thing. Taking a calculated risk is great, right? But also, just if it's not the right thing, don't jump in and make a mistake. Take a bit of time, be patient. If it's not the right thing, something else will come along.
Absolutely. And just for those who don't know, kind of like in terms of that size and scale of that last role that you were in with Marriott, because I find these figures mind blowing. But how many bedrooms are you responsible for across the piece?
Well, I know you're testing my memory here a little bit now, Christian. I think when we started the franchise model, we already had about 55 or 60 franchise hotels in Europe. By the year, about 10 years later, when I moved into a different role with Marriott, I think there was something like 600. So we grew it by a factor of 10 over about 10 years.
Wow.
And there was a fairly substantial pipeline as well. Now, look, I can't take all the credit for this. I had a wonderful team around me. We had a great team of developers. We had the full Marriott engine and machine behind us. But to be part of such amazing growth and to be the person steering the main strategy for that was like I said, it was a highlight of my career. I enjoyed it so much.
Amazing. Now, I speak to a lot of executives who spend a lot of time racking up the air miles and a lot of time in airport lounges, to your earlier point.
Right.
This is obviously it takes a toll on your body, on your mindset, on your time away from your family, all of that kind of stuff as well. So, like, what tips and advice have you got for people who do work across global markets? Have you got any travel tips?
Oh, I've got tons. I've got tons. But I'll try and simplify. And what I will say is when I was traveling and I was a little bit younger, my capacity to have a glass of wine on the plane and then maybe go to the bar when I arrive to sample the local culture is somewhat different to my capacity now. So bear that in mind if you're listening to this. Uh, it's my first piece of advice, really. When you travel with work, you are at work, but you will be going to places that you may never have gone to otherwise, and you may never go to again. So if you can do your work, but also fit into your diary time to go and explore a bit of the local culture, whatever that means to you, then go and do it because you don't want to regret afterwards. Oh, I'm not going to be in Bishkek ever again, and I didn't go and have a Mount Ararat brandy with some of the locals in a yurt. Like those are the sorts of things, if you seek them out, you can do it. But remember who's paying your wages. You've got to do your job, right? You can't go and do all the fun stuff and not and come back empty-handed on the work stuff. So my second piece of advice would be never ever check in a bag because if you're traveling on business, you need to be effective. You need to look the part. You need to have all of your stuff with you. You check in a bag. Airlines lose bags. If you're on a 3-day business trip, you're not going to get your bag before it's time to come home. So if I can avoid it, I never check a bag. I can do with gym kit. I can do about 6 or 7 days out of my wheelie because I've learned over time how to pack very, very efficiently. It helps if you're going to a warm country because you can pack less clothes. But that would be my second piece of advice. Never ever pack a bag, but pack it well. Sorry, never ever check a bag, but pack it well. My third piece of advice, never go home with a suntan. People start asking questions if you rock up at home or back in the office after you've been on a business trip somewhere nice and you've got a suntan. Always put your sunscreen on. And then I suppose the last bit, if you're going to travel a lot and you've got a busy work life, you have to get good at working from anywhere. That might be the back of a taxi. That might be a noisy corner that's still noisy but less noisy than the restaurant you're in. It might be running down a street between meetings. It could be anywhere. But if you want to stay successful, you're going to have to keep working while you're traveling. The world doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So you've got to pack in a full day's work. And look, the other benefit is that if you don't look at your emails or you don't do all these calls, when you get back from your business trip, you've basically got 2, 3, 4 days worth of work backed up. And that is unsustainable. And it will mean you'll not only be fighting the jet lag, but you'll be fighting the backlog of work that you've got to get through. So the most successful people when they're traveling are able to juggle all of the meetings they've got when they're on the road, all of the things they have to go do and see when on the road, and they can juggle that very effectively with keeping everything back on track, back in the office or whatever other work they're dealing with at the same time.
Love that. You're giving me George Clooney vibes from the movie Up in the Air. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but like I'm definitely feeling that vibe right now. So thanks very much for that, Phil. So in terms of like going back to the start of your career, in terms of what got you into hospitality in the first place, can you tell us a bit what that journey was?
Yeah, sure. So look, I'm a lifer in the industry. When I was at school, one of my close friends, his dad had a restaurant in North London, and I needed some pocket money, and they needed somebody to wash the pots and the pans. So after school, a couple of days a week, and at weekends, I would go in and wash the pots and pans. And after some time, I was upgraded to washing plates. And then a little bit after that, I reached the pinnacle of my career in the pot wash. I was washing glasses, and I was in a very busy restaurant, and the waiting staff were fun, and the guys in the kitchen were all fun, and I really enjoyed it. I got the bug early on, and I convinced one of the chefs to teach me how to cook, and so then I moved across from the pot wash to chopping vegetables, and then progressed a little bit, and this was all sort of in my spare time. And then I was so smitten that when it came time to think about further education, I went to university. I went to the University of Brighton, had an amazing time there at the Brighton Business School, doing a degree in hospitality management, which I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back at the course content, it was basically like a mini MBA, and it really set me up. And when I graduated, I essentially I did every job in a hotel, worked my way around, trying things out to see what I liked. Event management was a favorite, and I ended up in sales, and then got picked up by Marriott, and yeah, that was that. But look, I've been in it for my whole working life, and I could never see myself doing anything else. I've got friends who are lawyers and doctors and teachers and all sorts of different things. And I have to tell you, the things that we do in our industry are considerably more interesting and fun, and in many cases worthwhile, than what some of my friends do. I'm obviously not saying we're more worthwhile than doctors and nurses, because clearly we're not. And they have some great stories to tell as well, by the way. But I have to say, on an in the round basis, this is a fantastic industry, and it doesn't get nearly enough credit in our country for what it does to support the economy, what it does to keep people employed from many different parts of our society. It really is a remarkable industry, generating a huge amount of revenue for our country, and I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves.
Love that. Now, in terms of that rise that you had over that almost 25 years with Marriott and kind of like, some of the people who inspired you, kind of like both inside of the business and outside of the business. And one thing I wanted to ask a little bit about, especially over that period, was kind of like, was there any mentoring, coaching, that side of things that you managed to get from people, like that kind of advocacy within the organization? It'd be great to wrap all of that in.
Oh yes, definitely. In a company like Marriott, there are some great people, but in the wider sort of Marriott universe of hotel owners, of suppliers, of partners, there's a huge reach there. And since I've come to Yotel, I've noticed that that is actually very similar in this company. We're a smaller company, but we have a really wonderful, diverse range of owners. We have partners that we work with, and I think that's another thing that's good about our industry, by the way. So yes, along the way, I've worked with some really interesting people. I've met some inspirational people. I've met a hotel owner who was a refugee, came over here to the UK with nothing, having been forced out of his home country. And he ended up over the years building up a truly magnificent property portfolio worth well into the billions of pounds, and all from such a difficult start without many resources. And that particular person I've become close to over the years, and he has been a real inspiration to me. What somebody can do with just sheer willpower and determination. And he won't mind me saying this, that he is dyslexic, and he has found that that has actually become a superpower for him over the years. And so to deal with the adversity and to come out in such a great position, I find that story incredibly inspirational. I worked with a leader at Marriott. I had a boss at Marriott for many years, not long enough, sadly. He got called to bigger and better things. And he used to give me some of the best bits of advice. He would say things like, never let perfect be the enemy of good. And it's something that I find very, very helpful. Look, we all want perfection, of course we do, but in a busy environment, and I'm saying never saying anyone should ever settle for mediocre, but in a busy environment when you need to get stuff done, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. It was really, really important advice. He also said to me, he said, there's not much that can't be solved by a good sit down and a nice conversation. Come at it with the right frame of mind, and you can solve most of the problems that people have got in our industry. You know, we're not trying to solve world hunger or stop unjust wars from taking place. We're in the hotel industry. You know, we can sit down and talk things through, and we can normally get to a good place. When it comes to leading teams, I remember him saying, um, have relentless energy to get things done and lead by example, and people will that energy will be infectious and people will follow you. And then perhaps the best bit of advice I got was not from him, but was from another leader. And he used to say, only do the things that only you can do. Only do the things that only you can do. If someone else can do it, delegate it to them and let them grow and let them shine and let them have the credit for what they've done. Because there are things that only you can do. And if you start doing other people's things for them, you're going to run out of time to do the things that only you can do. And then you're in trouble as an organization. So I feel like I've picked up so much over the years, Christian. I mean, I suppose I've also picked up some things that I've learned about how not to act. And and maybe in the interest of keeping things positive, I won't talk about that list because it's maybe longer than we'd like. But look, everybody interacts with the world in a slightly different way. And some of it we like and some of it we don't.
Excellent. No, I think those were really good pieces of advice. I've just written those three down, and I'll be adding them to my repertoire. So thank you very much for that, Bill. Now, not every day is a sunny day in business. I know and this is a positive chat about kind of like the industry and all of that side of things as well. But I also think it is important to acknowledge that when people do have hurdles, failures, that side of things, that we acknowledge what they are, and also talk about what we've kind of learned from them as well. So is there any one situation that, or more than that, that you would kind of like want to talk about in terms of something that you've overcome?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's the right question to ask too, because you're right. Not every day is a sunny day. Look, I think it comes down to people. I have, on occasion in my career, had people who just weren't the right people in their current roles. I'm not saying they were bad people. They were just good people, but for whatever reason, they'd ended up in the wrong role. And I think as leaders, we have a duty, not just for the effectiveness of the business, but also for the general well-being of that person. Nobody wants to be in a role they're not suited for. Nobody wants to be in a role that they're failing at. And sometimes it's just a bad fit, and there are other things that they could be much, much better at. And why leave somebody in a role that they're miserable in, particularly if they're doing a bad job, um, and it's detrimental to the business. And of course, you have a duty of care to that person to help them and train them and guide them and steer them to do the right thing and to coach them and give them the appropriate goals and the appropriate tools and team members to do their jobs. But occasionally you just find that it's the wrong fit. And there have been one or two occasions in my career where I've done all of those things around coaching and providing resources, and I've not accepted fully that unfortunately that's the wrong person in the wrong job. And there are a couple of occasions where I wish I'd acted more quickly for the good of them and for the good of the business. There was one occasion that I let go a little bit too long. And in the end, I did sit down with that person and we had a heart to heart. And that person was so grateful that I had come and given it some thought because I had a solution. I had another role that was better suited for them. And they have gone off into that other role. They've moved on now. This is a long time ago. They've moved on to much bigger and better things, but they moved on to that other role directly after I maneuvered them, for want of a better word, out of the role that they were in. And they absolutely shone like you wouldn't believe. They knocked it out of the park. And they went from being in a potentially career-ending role where they really weren't performing despite everybody's best efforts to finding the place where they belonged. And so I suppose this is a long preamble just to say, look, help people to make the decisions that are best for them and for what they're doing, which is ultimately the best decision for the business. And sometimes that involves a difficult conversation that you don't want to have, but you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. You can
Really
get
good
you,
advice.
you can get people into great places where they're much more useful to the company, but also enjoying themselves more. And the people around them will feel it too, because nobody wants to work with somebody who's having a really tough time because they're in the wrong job.
Absolutely. It brings on to the next question, which is about kind of like we touched on this a little bit in terms of attracting people into the hospitality sector, why our sector is great as well. But like what skills, mindsets, like, do you think that the next generation of hospitality leaders should have? It's not just all going to be tech and AI, right?
Absolutely. Well, look, I for sure, tech and AI is going to impact our industry. It's going to, I think, over time, impact so much. But thankfully, we are a people industry, and we need to have those interpersonal relationships. So I think we're okay for a bit. Um, but look, what I would say is the people that have always been successful in our industry are the people that understand the three stakeholders that keep our industry going. We need our staff, right? We need our people in our hotels. We need our customers in our hotels. And we need our owner and franchise community to make sure we have hotels that can accommodate people, guests, and that can have people working in them. Those are the three stakeholder groups. It has always been this way. And the people that are most successful in our industry really, really take time to understand what it is that those three groups want, need, and desire in order to succeed and be happy in our industry. And it changes over time. We've seen this over the years, and no doubt it will continue to change. Guest expectations will change, owner expectations will change, the way that people want to work with us will change. The most successful leaders of the future will be the ones that can continue to understand those three stakeholder groups and work out what is the best way to get the best out of each of them. And so I suppose my advice there is spend time, take the energy to really, really learn what it is that your customer wants, your guest, what is it that they want, and then work out what it is that your people want in order to thrive and be happy. And then, we all need owners and franchisees, and they are a little bit more binary, right? It's the bottom line. So focus on that. But there are different ways to get to the bottom line. And I'm being a little bit flippant there. I know that our owners are much more, are much deeper than that. So that would be my advice. Be wary of the evolving trends in those three different stakeholder groups.
Absolutely. Now, if you could go back for my final question and give your younger self um, a bit of career advice or something like that, what would that be?
Um, I think the best advice I would give, and I know that some people find this a little bit difficult today because we've all got so used to sending messages and emails. And it was getting back to our point about AI. We need the human touch in our industry. So depending on what people want to be doing in our industry, my advice to my younger self would be get out there and network as much as you can because we are a people industry. People buy and sell from people. We are an industry that we are actually quite collaborative between different companies. And I remember when I was a chef, if we ever ran out of butter, I'd go to the restaurant next door. They'd gladly lend me a load of butter, whatever it might be. We are collaborative. I was at the UK Hospitality Association lunch, and I was amazed to see people who are competitors, fierce competitors, sitting down and talking about our industry and what our industry needs. So we are quite collaborative, even though we're very competitive with each other, we're still very collaborative. So my advice would be build as big a network of people in our industry as you possibly can. Get out there, don't be afraid, don't sit behind your screen, get out there and build that network, whatever part of the business you're in. It's always helpful. If you're in F&B, get to know who the best mixologists and the best chefs and the best suppliers are. Find out who is farming the best truffles in the UK because you want to reduce your food miles. Get to know that person. If you're in sales, get to know all of the main buyers and customers and intermediaries. Get to know them, network with them on a personal level. It just really, really helps. And we're all nice people by and large in our industry, right? So it's fun too, because I think the bigger your network is, the more you'll achieve professionally. But I think personally too, it's also very, very rewarding. So yeah, that would be my advice. Network, network, network.
Love that. Well, I'm taking those three things away from me. The never let perfect be the enemy of good. Let your energy be infectious and let people follow you, and then only do the things you can do. So if there's three takeaways from today, and network, 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 I think that's what everybody should be taking away from this chat, Phil. Thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck in the new role, and we'll keep a weather eye on what's going to be happening with Yotel over the next couple of months. It looks like it's going to be exciting times, right?
It will be. It will be. Keep an eye out. We're going places. Listen, Krishnan, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our chat, and I'll see you soon.